Vernon K. Stevenson, who was the president of the Nashville and Chattanooga Railroad, was the Tennessee State Quartermaster for the Tennessee State troops before they joined the Confederate Army, and he bravely flees in his beautiful custom car, tacked onto the last train leaving Nashville to the disgust of Forrest. Finally, what food the Confederates can't get out, they throw it open to the people of Nashville, and then Forrest will take his command and move on south. These armies will move down to Murfreesboro, down to Chattanooga, and eventually rendezvous at Corinth, where Sidney Johnson has a little idea hatching in his head to try to regain the initiative here in the Western Theater. So it's an interesting thing that happens here. If you believe the Western Theater, as I do, is the domino theory, the domino got kicked here, and it just rolls on through the south, all the way up into North Carolina, and is heading towards Virginia by the time Joe Johnston will surrender the Army of Tennessee and been in place in late April 1865, 2.5 weeks after the Army of Northern Virginia packs it in. If you look at the last map in your handout, which I believe is number 9, you will see the collapse of Confederate Department number 2, the cheapest land grab in terms of human life ever of the entire Civil War, and arguably the most important. You have now overrun 2/3 of the state of Tennessee. You've captured Nashville on February 26th, Clarksville Falls on February 19th. Tennessee's the last state to join the Confederacy, June 8, 1861, and they've just lost their state capital. What is going on here, wonder the Tennesseans, wonder Governor Isham Harris, whose government is now being shipped to Memphis and will stay there until June when the Federals capture that city, and then the government of Tennessee is in the saddle. Wherever Isham Harris is the government of the state of Tennessee. So the Federals will gobble up all of this stuff, with the exception of the area right around Memphis, that'll fall in June 10th, and some portions of eastern Tennessee. Department number 2's defense line goes to the Ohio, Tennessee, Kentucky border, all the way down to the Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi border. Again, more land grabbed cheaply than any other time during the entire Civil War. And for those that think that the British and the French and everybody else only paid attention to the Eastern Theater, then answer this for me: why did the London bond market, when the news of Fort Donelson arrived, skyrocket? Why did the Londoners start to worry about their favorite dark fire tobacco that was grown in Clarksville they no longer were going to be able to get, which was exported overseas and made more millionaires in 1858 in Clarksville's history? Why did other things factor in terms of the British economic and the European economic markets when the news of Fort Donelson got there? Most importantly, when the British are sitting on the fence about the foreign recognition thing, the Confederates are still holding reasonably well in Virginia. You've just lost one of your states. No country is a sovereign nation if it can't protect its borders. And if you have the Confederate Secretary of State meeting with the British Foreign Secretary, and they say, okay, we're considering recognize the Confederate States as a sovereign entity, let's look at how your border situation is. Well, we've only lost a little bit of Northern Virginia. We're still holding around Centerville until about April, so that'll be fine. How about out west? Can we skip what's going on in Tennessee, move to the Trans-Mississippi, where we don't really want to talk about that? There's no way the Brits or the French or anybody else are going to recognize the Confederacy having lost one of their states. Just not going to happen. So anytime Gary Gallagher wants to take me on about Antietam versus this, not a problem. Anytime, anywhere, 5 times on Sunday. He will owe me a steak dinner. I promise. That's the consideration you have to keep in mind. When the Soviet Union is falling apart, the Baltic states of Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania do not get immediately recognized by the United States because they're afraid of Czechoslovakia 68 or Hungary 56. Is Gorbachev going to roll in the tanks? When he doesn't, then comes your diplomatic recognition. That's the way it's been for hundreds of years, ever since people exchanged ambassadors back and forth to do treaties, recognition, etc., etc. The Confederate States of America, of course, will never be recognized because the British are going to make so much money selling guns and powder and lead and everything else to both sides, they would be stupid to jump into one side or the other. If anything Brits have been throughout their history is fairly pragmatic. They can see how the Czechs are coming in. This is a fabulous war. We love this war. The longer you keep it up, the happier we are financially. Those are the stakes that will start to happen. That's why Kendall Gott calls his book Where the Civil War Was Lost. Where the South Lost the Civil War. And then you got Dufour's book calling about the fall of New Orleans in April, the night the South lost the Civil War, or the night the war was lost, which is a fabulous book if you've never read it. It reads like a novel. Those are the stakes that happen here. And for the next 3 years, Nashville will be the siren song of the Confederacy. I do a wonderful program on that if you ever like to have me come back up. with my tie it into ancient Greek history. The sirens of Homer's Odyssey lures the Confederates no less than 5 times to Nashville, either directly or indirectly, to recapture the capital. And the closest they get is December 1864, where they can see the spires in the distance, and they're destroyed by George Henry Thomas in 2 days of sledgehammer fighting. So like the sirens of ancient Greece, the Confederate Army in Tennessee will die on the rocks of Nashville, as the sirens will lure so many ancient sailors long ago. That, I think, is the stakes of what comes out of this. It is just a colossal screw up from Albert Sidney Johnston down, who doesn't come out here to deal with it, or send Hardee to deal with it, because you're going to have 5 brigadier generals. By here you're down to 4, because Tillman's already been taken off the chessboard. And these guys are doing nothing, as you saw, arguing and fighting, and even though Floyd is senior by date of commission, he's not the alpha personality that Pillow is, and he's certainly not the competent man that Buckner is. And that's what happens right on this very spot, a couple hundred years, well, not a couple hundred, about 151 years ago, in a couple of months. Now, everybody likes to know where Forrest escaped, so we're going to drive down to see that. We'll loop around and drive through, and I'll point out. And we'll also see, I'll point out where the library is today. Modern library is where Floyd formed that massive column of brigades and regiments. That's where the Confederate attack will actually kick off and start swinging out towards Barnes Hollow and Dudley's Hill, where we just were a little while ago. Comments or questions?
Given everything you just said, doesn't that make it, you think that makes the case for Johnson just going all in and coming down here, and because Grant was isolated and crushing him?
Absolutely, and they ordered Polk to send some troops down for the exact same reason he refuses to do it. Because I own the most important piece of God's real estate here in Columbus. What Polk's not getting is once Phelps has done the river raid, his department is now cut off. By that time, Beauregard's out that way. But that Department Number 2 is now isolated from the rest of Department Number 2. The communications are completely cut. Railroad bridge has been damaged, no more trains, telegraph's cut. So you have to send telegraph way south and relay it back up to get anything to City Johnson. Johnson will start to fall back from Bowling Green. Pillow or Polk will not start to fall back from Columbus until this place falls.
The Park Service always made it clear that the surrenders here up there, especially not here.
Oh, it is there. Yeah, right. Yeah,
Here's your mark on the right of the bus. We're talking about the Rice House. Like I said, this home stood until the 60s. There are pictures of it you can see at the library here.
Right there. It's a shame. Street, Petty Street. Petty. Fort. Petty.
And turn left. As we cross the hollow coming up, I'll point out where Church Street crosses. There was a bridge there. It's not there now, but it actually still shows up on the Google Maps thing. So if you Google Map it, you'll see the bridge that's no longer there. And it hasn't been for quite some time, evidently. Now, there's a really fine Donelson campaign book that's written by Jack Hurst called Men of Fire, and he isolates on Grant and Forrest as the 2 major players that come out of the Fort Donelson campaign, and I absolutely concur. I've gotten to know Jack. He's with the Cookville Roundtable in Tennessee, and we've had him over a couple times. And he has a second book that ties into that, and I think he's working on a 3rd one as well that's going to focus on Grant and Sherman, starting here at Fort Donelson. Because they certainly will rise to become the great officers that they will. Grant, of course, commanding the Union Army, and Forrest, in my opinion, the finest cavalry commander of the Confederacy. None of that plume cavalier banjo nonsense that those Virginians had. These guys were killers out here. Okay, this is the area where Floyd and Pillow are going to form up that column of brigades in the morning. Natcourt Drive is off to your right. This is the left flank of the Confederate defense line on this ridge right here. Cumberland River will be slightly off to our left, so these guys are going to come down and swing over and then start to move kind of in a right oblique order off to our right, heading towards Barnes Hollow and Dudley's Hill. So we're quite a distance from the base of Dudley's Hill on the other side. Okay, we're coming up to Lick Creek. It's a little wider than it was with the back flooding of the time. Of course, the back flooding now is because of the TVA lock and dam system. And if you look off to your right, you'll see, if you can, some high power lines a couple hundred yards off to the right. That's where the Smith's Ford was. That's where Forrest is going to cross and bring out his command. It's hard to see sometimes during the day, but there's actually high power lines out that way. We'll see him on the land side when we get up here to the subdivision. We'll turn right.
There's a lot more to this campaign than I thought. I didn't know that. I appreciate it.
Coming up here, we'll take a right turn into the subdivision. How are that guy's going?
Yeah, very long. That's one. That's kind of cheap. It's very solid life.
To the south of us is the Cumberland Furnace, the ruins of the iron furnace, and the rolling mill are still there. That is going to be destroyed by the Federal Navy as they move towards Clarksville, a couple days after the capture of Fort Donelson on February 16th. And of course, coming out of this is where Grant gets the nickname of Unconditional Surrender Grant, because that's what he demands of Buckner, much to Buckner's chagrin. The reason why Buckner was willing to stay behind and talk to him is because of his friendship with Grant prior to the war. He figures he could get some pretty good terms. I think you saw in the movie they talk about where Buckner had helped out Grant some years before the war. By the way, Grant never repaid him.
But he did offer it.
He offered his purse, but it didn't sound like, by the way, I owe you some money, so let me give you that. It's like, my purse is at your disposal. A little bit different, like, darn it, I owe you some money. Hope you have a low interest rate. Okay, as we make the curve, you'll see where some of the power lines come in across the Lick Creek. It is in this general vicinity that Forrest is going to cross at the Smith Ford to make the land side on this side, and then continue on south with his 1,000 men, his troopers, and whatever infantrymen and artillerymen want to go with him. And they will make it to Nashville after a couple of days of march through the cold. None of these guys will get sick. As the surgeon warns, if you try to bring these people out, they'll all get sick from the exposure. And he just did not realize, evidently, that if you are burning calories and keeping your blood circulating, that's not going to happen. Especially if you're no longer immersed in the cold water. We did a tour here several years ago for the Tennessee Division, Sons of Confederate Veterans, and everybody, you have to understand what Forrest means to native Tennesseans. It's what Lee means to Virginians. I saw grown men crying on this spot. They never thought they would ever get to see the spot where the legend of Bedford Forrest will start to take root. On the way back.
I mean, not bad, but it's like, but, and then this stuff is awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you want any?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
I didn't let the tickets across to me.
No.
Reminds me of a lot of
Well, they keep the place clean, I'll say that.
yeah, it's clean. Yeah.
Patty.
I wonder what people do.
Government system.